You have your agent or chatbot fully embedded in the software, and you can ask questions. Please tell me what critical preventive maintenance work orders are overdue. Please tell me what my technician X, Y, and Z did yesterday. Do they have any overdue work orders? And you can just converse. I think that's probably a better way to do the work, right? Not having the static reports, having kind of more of a data exploration on the fly as you need.
There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin. I have a distinguished group of guests with me on the screen today, and I would like to welcome them. This is the first time that we are going to delve into artificial intelligence, or AI. As I said to the folks on the screen, I don't know a lot about AI. I've used it more in the past year. You might say I don't know a lot about facilities management either, but I definitely don't know a lot about AI. And that's why I've asked my guests to appear with me to start the discussion. And I want to thank each of them for joining me. From the top down, my first guest is Irina Mladenova. Irina, did I get that correct? And if I didn't, feel free to correct me.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Irina is the Chief Product Officer for Vytal. Vytal is located here in Boston, Massachusetts. And just full disclosure, Vytal is a sister company to CREF. We have Thomas Elliott, Director of Facilities. Tom works for Aramark Healthcare Plus. Tom is located out in Confluence Health in Wenatchee, Washington. Tom, thanks for joining. I know it's a little bit earlier for you, but Tom is an early riser. From my days in the recruiting world, all the West Coast people, I knew I could always talk to them early because you're up early. So 4 or 5 in the morning, you're available. So Tom, welcome. And my final guest introduction, Pouyan Layegh. Thank you. AVP for Engineering and Building Systems for MD Anderson down in Houston, Texas. So thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. I think we tried to balance the panel today with our hospital folks, with a software lens from Irina, who's done a lot of work in AI and has a great background. And I want to start, though, with Pouyan down at MD Anderson in Texas. Pouyan, I've seen you give a couple of classes, and I've seen you on panels, delving into a little bit of AI. Tell us, how is MD Anderson, more specifically in your area of engineering and building systems, how are you using AI? What are you doing?
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you everybody on the panel here. Very nice meeting you, and thanks for inviting me. Happy Friday. I mean, here, it's a nice, very nice weather in Houston today, and we typically don't have this nice weather here. So it's probably last 2 days, and then heat and humidity come back here, and that we need to deal with it for the next 9 months. So being said,
well, let me ask Pouyan before you go to. Yes. I've said this a number of times. I am infatuated with the weather, and if I had really been good in like science and math, which I was horrible in, I might have gone that route. So you said it's comfortable and nice. What's the temperature in Houston? It's February 28th. What's the temp down there?
Temp is right now 61 degrees.
Perfect.
And it's gone up to 75 today, which is a nice day for Houston, right? Because typically it's, when you go a little bit further, we have this hot summer weather is coming in, and we're talking about 95 degree above, and typically a very humid, because sitting by the Gulf, we get 80% humidity or above. Sometimes, wake up in the morning, you have 100% humidity, and 90 degree outside. So it becomes really tough for the facility and hospitals to keep compliance here. So this one of the challenges is, we daily faces here of the temperatures and humidity, fluctuations happen in the weather around, not to say, we have to deal with the storms and hurricanes and floods and everything else happening in the Houston area. But today's discussion is around AI, so don't want to go too far away from that topic and how we use the AI. So I want to just make it a little bit separate from that. What is happening in the hospital? And I'm hearing it from our counterparts in the hospital, diagnosis, doctors and all that stuff that have been using AI. I don't think that we want to dive too much into that one, but I think they are really been advanced in that area, more of that understanding the using, the genomes and all kind of, artificial intelligence to trying to basically, find how we can treat the cancers or prevent the cancers. On that front, on everyday news, you find something on the headlines, either from MD Anderson or other counterparts that they're making breakthroughs every day. But back to our engineering and building system and the facility sides, that it looked that we are maybe a couple of steps behind of that, what happens in the medical world. But we also supporting that is that how we can just help and use this tool to gain efficiencies in our buildings and in our day-to-day operation. I started to mention about that, some of the problems and issues that we face here as a compliance. We have starting to using a lot of good, artificial intelligence that help us as a tool that we can find the areas that we need to have more improvements or is get out of compliance. Historically, we have to go through a lot of data to find out that, hey, what's going on and what's the problems that happening, why my OR is getting out of control and not that humidity or the temperatures that I need to keep it up. But now with that AI tools that available for us, things can happen really fast, really quick.
Can you give us an example, Pouyan, and Tom, I'll go to you next, but can you give us an example of one way in which you've been able to deploy AI to fix, let's take the temperature and humidity, right? A huge issue for you guys. Can you give us an example of how you've used AI to problem solve for you?
Yeah, to just give you a very quick example on that one. MD Anderson is a huge place, right? We have about 16, almost 17 million square foot of the facility here. And plus we are building about, 7 more million square foot in the next 5 years, right? So just monitoring all that much, facility, it's impossible. You have to have so much resources to be able to monitor that one to make sure everything's running correctly. Well, everybody knows that modern BAS right now, building automation systems, have so much connectivity and collecting a lot of data, right? Sensors all over the places, right? So we are not short on those to collecting data. The problem or issues was that, hey, where am I having a problem and trouble? So systems that we starting to use, some of them homegrown, and then we switched to the some available, I want to say intelligent systems available out there, like fault detection systems out there, collecting all, numerous data available for us and go through those and find out that what are the issues and the problems are. So for example, the systems that we deploy, it's a Clockworks is from Boston area. And those systems is not only just find out simple problems and issues on my compliance areas that I have to, like pharmacies, also deep dive into the data that are available through my building automation system and go all the way and say that, hey, it looks like that your fan is not performing correctly, or your valve has been stuck open, or your heating is not meet the set points. Historically, I have to have engineers to pull that one up, look at the trends, look at maybe 20 different point of connections to that device to find out, oh, where is the problem? Right now, the systems is pointing me out to that maybe a 1 or 2 possible problem. And that make my engineers' job much easier to communicate with our facility folks to say that, go check out, it looks like this valve has been stuck open. That's why I cannot meet the set points in the OR downstream. And I want to say that the system is almost 90% accurate. It's getting more intelligent and intelligent. Feedback information back into it. It learns and understands that this is a trend, or this is a problems, or these are issues that is more commonly happen, and it's getting better and better.
Tom, Tom, you may recognize. Tom has been on, well, you were more on the podcast than the Healthcare Facilities Network, but Tom, you may recall, is our Band of Brothers expert. We talked a little history. Now we're talking about artificial intelligence. Tom, out in Wenatchee with Aramark, how are you guys deploying AI? What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to start off with the weather, just like you did earlier, because here it is. It's also very comfortable here right now. It's a comfortable 36 degrees, but it's going to get to a balmy 48 today. I'm looking out at a couple of feet of snow, but I'm using it for a lot of data, just to simplify my day-to-day work, day-to-day workflows. I think one example is the other day, and this is specifically tied to the weather. So the other day, my boss asked about our natural gas costs, right? Because in the wintertime, natural gas can be pretty expensive, especially on the West Coast. Not so much in Texas. Texas, I think, is a little less expensive. As far as natural gas goes, it's all that piping it from Texas to here that becomes the problem. And we were expected to hit some sub-zero temperatures on Fahrenheit. And so at the same time, my boss is asking me about these high natural gas bills. We're also getting notices for curtailment, right? Because we have to pull back. Because then I have to explain, well, if we go above, the 8%, I think it was 8% of our predicted usage, then we go to the daily rate. We operate off index, and then we go to the daily rate, which can take us from, say, 75 cents a therm to $5 a therm. That can be significant. When I was in Sacramento, we had one year we went from let's see, it was January. We went from an average of, I think, 250,000 a month to $1 million.
Wow! In January, budget buster.
And so, yes, I got a few calls from the CFO on that one, but trying to understand that, right, and trying to explain that. So I started down this rabbit hole and started Googling, okay, how do I explain this to my boss? And so I Googled, all right, we know that temperatures are an issue. So I reached back, I had invoices all the way back to 2018. So I said, okay, I Googled looking for the average temperature ranges each month for each year. And it came up with averages, and it was real. I just couldn't get it to do what I wanted to, give me the information I wanted to give me. So I thought, why not? I logged in, used an AI tool, said, create a table showing, actually I said, please create a table. You have to be nice to your future evil overlords. So, I said, please create a table showing the average high temperature ranges per year, per month since 2018, and worked a second, and it created this beautiful table. I just exported that to Excel. And then the Excel already had my invoice numbers, right? And then I asked it to give me a similar table, but showing the natural gas price index since 2018 monthly. Right. And so it created this table. Wasn't exactly what I wanted. So I threw it and said, can you break this table down further into 3 columns? And it started working. And then it gave me this beautiful table and exported that, dropped into the graph. And then I asked it. So I made that graph overlaid the costs with the index with the temperature ranges. Then I took one additional step, and back in 2022, particularly 2020, end of 2021, 22, we saw a major spike in natural gas costs. And so I asked the AI tool, what drove the natural gas price index spike at this time? And it gave me this beautiful list, talking about hurricanes, and then the prices went up, and then it went up to another spike. And then I'm like, okay, what caused this spike on this month and this? And it said, and it gave a list, include pipeline maintenance, low supply in the Pacific Northwest, the invasion of Ukraine, all of that just tied all in, and it gave me this beautiful list. And so I dropped those into the slides for each of those spikes. And then I asked about why did it drop all of a sudden, because now we're back to 2021 norms. And then it went through and gave me a list. And so, and I was able to do that all in about 30 minutes.
Wow.
Where historically, if I'm trying to get Google to give me the information I want, what it would typically do is give me the information, then I would have to hand jam it into a Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yep.
And then I would have to go do all of these I would have to manipulate the data, do all of these things. And that could take me days, right? To get all of the information between, bouncing back and forth between all the other things that I have to do, because that's not really my day job. Figuring, it's not the primary job of a facility director to do all this analysis, but I don't know very many health systems that can afford to put data analysts in facilities, right?
Well, sometimes sometimes you can't afford to put technicians in, never mind data analysts.
True story.
Different topic.
Well, yes, we can definitely
different topic
about supply and demand of trades and all of that. So it was a huge time saver, right? And it came up with this, and so I was able to drop it into a really nice report and say, okay, here's what's driving our natural gas. And then I took it a step beyond that, and I was talking to my team. I said, we know we have curtailments. We know we have these things that we have to do with natural gas. We know that AI knows what knows from the reports. It can see all the reports. It has all of the data. Wouldn't it be fun or wouldn't it be cool if it was tied into the point where it said, okay, temperatures are going to do this, price index are going to be this, and automatically, looks at ties in with our integrates with our BMS to say, okay, this is how much heating you've got going on currently. This is how much you expect to go on, and then integrated with our CMMS to create a work order to start to have the engineers go ahead and start our electric boilers to mitigate the impact of the natural gas, because our electricity here is relatively cheap. Yeah. So, because we live on the river. Yeah, all of our power is hydroelectric here. So that's one of the things that it's almost like taking we use it to take steps out of our process, to automate those things that normally we have to think about, but there's not enough of us or not enough time for us to think about these things moment to moment between that, the normal crises of facilities management, like floods and things like that.
Well, what's interesting about those two answers, Pouyan, you came at it kind of from the BMS, the integrating it into workflows and process. Tom, you kind of started out, you ended up back where Pouyan was, but you started out using it as a tool, a research tool for you, and kind of both ends of that spectrum. Irina, to you're not a director of facilities management. You're a chief product officer for Vytal, which is a CMMS system. And you are, I've spoken with you enough to know you're pretty well versed in AI. As you listen to these two gentlemen kind of at both ends of the spectrum, from your product or from your point of view, how do you see AI integrating in, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities from a facilities perspective that you have to deal with?
Yeah, actually, the example gave is perfect. I'm going to unfold it. So I see three key areas where AI has a big impact on hospital FM. The first one we already talked, it's automation, right? There are so many repeat manual laborious tasks. They actually lead to quite a lot of error because people are bored doing the same thing over and over again, spending hours and hours. And our product is dissecting these workflows and trying to automate them in ways maybe that humans can't imagine today. That would free up the FM teams to do higher value work, and they can actually focus on strategy. Tom said, like, I need to know what to do, maybe what to check about the energy spike. So let them do that, not do the data analysis. Another area is compliance, right? With myriads of standards on federal, local, state level, it would be very helpful to have an AI-driven chatbot. Let's call it a regulatory assist that can work for you in the background and tell you, well, I think that as you go into this survey or like daily rounding, based on your finding in keywords, you are violating standard A or B. We kind of mapped the other day with my product team the journey that surveyors are having right now when they do these mock audits. It's actually a lot of steps, right? They need to print the inventory of assets, especially if they're fire and doors, in an Excel. Then they need to print maybe the floor plans. And then they walk around, they jot this on a piece of paper or at best an iPad. Then they go home after 8 hours of that. And in their hotel room, they actually transcribe it back into a software. And they're trying to match hundreds of standards to their findings. They've also taken some photos along the way at best. And trying to mesh all of that together, we heard 2 days per visit for kind of like a mid-sized hospital. Now, the reimagine process from a product perspective is to automate 80% of that and just do it on the fly. Have your assets loaded on your iPad or phone, go around, take a picture. Based on the picture, you can actually extract potentially a finding. You can say, oh, I'm seeing a leak or a mold in the ceiling. So you can apply image recognition. Or you can use voice recognition and just dictate. You can just type, you can just jot notes. And then based on these keywords, like I have mold on the ceiling in the OR, that can auto classify the standard you are violating. So you don't have to go and cross compare your standards to findings after work hours. So that can save lots of time, right? Just that piece. It can be applied to daily roundings as well. And the last part is data insights. Going back to Tom's example with the energy management piece, it takes days to weeks to find answers to critical questions. Someone needs to go find the data, make sure it's actually credible for the right period of time, then manipulate it. Maybe has a BI tool. I'm not sure what Tom is using, but let's say they have Power BI or Tableau. Then they have to create these reports. All of that takes a lot of time. And also the reports are static. Maybe by the time you finish answering the question, things have changed. So what we are looking at is much more what I would call dynamic data exploration. You have your agent or chatbot fully embedded in the software, and you can ask questions. Please tell me what critical preventive maintenance work orders are overdue. Please tell me what my technician X, Y, and Z did yesterday. Do they have any overdue work orders? And you can just converse. I think that's probably a better way to do the work, right? Not having the static reports, having kind of more of a data exploration on the fly as you need.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us. Relative to using AI to take on some of the tasks that were formerly done by people, have you done an MD Anderson? It's a big change management process, right? In some ways, you're changing the way things are. How have the employees, how has staff responded to it? And has that been a challenge to to kind of bring them along? Because again, you can't kick somebody in the butt and say, just do it. That's kind of an old way, right? So what's that process been like for you guys? And if that's too much of a personal question, don't feel like you have to answer. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but how has that been for you?
Well, that's a very good question, because the change is always hard, but but we all know it's upon us, and if we don't change and adapt, then we will be in trouble. So typically, it's a classic case of that, a major change and disruptive of industries, right? So it's no difference that when we are going from flip phones to the smartphones, and then no different from that using that, our paper, taking the notes, or making the logs and all that stuff, now go to electronic systems, and then trying to say that, hey, everybody needs to be, moved to the electronic systems, and so that there are some early adopters that they are welcome it, and they are actually take it at the other level. They're starting to use some AI tools, or some other availables for them, so that they can just enhance their day-to-day work. We have some little bit majority of the late adopters. They need some trainings. They are a little bit sit on the sideline and see that, oh, other people's doing it, and then becomes all that. And then of course it's always a group of people that they don't want to do it, or they don't believe in it, and then coming back, it says that, okay, how can we help them out to just get on board, how we can provide the training. The good things on MD Anderson's side, for any of this major change, we have a very layout process for the change management. So when we go and moving from one system to the other systems, or more intelligent systems, we have a system in place that how communicate, how we just make the buy-ins from the frontline staff, and also bring them on board early, explain the whys, and that way they are getting more, hopefully getting more on board for that one. But one recent example, we are working hard right now to just walk into our digital twins. You probably heard the digital twins a lot. And we try
for somebody who doesn't know what a digital twin is, Pouyan, how would you describe it?
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, the digital twins, it's the I want to say that electronic model of your physical systems, right? Your digital twins of our body right here, it's that, hey, that's going to be that actually electronic models that our doctors being using inside their system to actually model the human body, or a patient, or somebody, and then using that model to make experimentations before that actually go into physical work. Same thing in the facility side. Our digital twin, it's the electronic models of our buildings, right? With all the components here, live components here, right, inside the building. So basically, you are building a model of your buildings in your systems and in computers, and you can see everything's live, and you be able to actually make some predictions, or running some models, or running some changes. Before that, you go and make actual physical change. You can just see that how your building is going to be a response, or what current status of your building is going to be look like. So, but to be able to get to that point, of course, you have to have your 3D model of your buildings. That part easy. That's not the hard. But also you have to have a live information just flow into it, right? Your building automation informations, your work order informations, and all kind of other informations that needs to come in. So how many people are in the buildings, what rooms are occupied, not occupied, all that information need to come to that, and you be able to see your building. There is we are starting to lay it up. We're trying to collecting, and we are very early process to just go toward that, having the digital twins. We have some pilot projects. Back to your change management, there are a group of people say that, hey, what is it all for? I mean, how am I going to use this? I mean, why are you even spending that much time and energy to trying to provide some things that I don't think is going to be any use for it, right? So But be able to just bring them on board, you have to go back a little bit and say, hey, these are the challenge that we are facing. And these are the problems that we're trying to solve. And we believe this is a tool that it can just make your life easy. So when I showed to them a little bit of that, hey, look about that, your day-to-day, and instead of you jump in a truck and a drive to the site and be able to just do this or do that, I can provide that one on your iPad right before you leave your shop. And you can be able to see probably 80% of that information you need. And then looks like the bulbs goes off for our technicians in frontline, so that, oh, I see what you're talking about now. I think that I can use that, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to say that, what is it for me? I mean, how is it going to help me to just do my life easier, or do my job better, or make me more efficient or effective, or whatever challenge that they face. I mean, I clearly hear from Thomas that, hey, I have a challenge of gathering all this information and be able to graphically show clearly to higher up that what was happening in the gas range, gas prices and all that stuff. Thomas, believe me or not, yes, Texas is a cheaper gas. However, we face the same situation that when the cold's coming in, and because the gas is afloat, we're going to see a spike in our bills. And we need to be prepared for that one, or also be able to explain that one. Not to say that our electricity is also tied in the gas rates and are going to see this spike in the electricity rate. So as a common problems going across the industry, and these tools can help us out to save our time and money and gain efficiencies. No doubt about that.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about it, and it's all happening so quickly, right? If maybe some organizations within the past 5 years, they've transitioned from paperwork orders all over the place to, handhelds. And, we worked with some organizations. I remember when handhelds came out, and you guys probably similar. There were folks who were afraid to use them because it's going to track me in the bathroom, or it's going to know what I'm doing. And that's always part of it, right? And now you're going from that. This is almost steroids, right? Like Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco on steroids in the amount of change. And now it's, okay, maybe you're not going to track me in the bathroom. Maybe you don't need me anymore, which is even more scary than just kind of using a handheld. And Irina, to you, taking off your Vytal software hat for a second, when you look at it, like, kind of set the table, I guess, for somebody maybe listening to this, maybe they're a technician. Everybody's heard of AI by this point, right? But you kind of see it, it's infiltrated down. But what is it and what isn't it? Just kind of like is there a baseline? Is it simple to set a baseline for what AI is and what AI isn't?
Yeah, so AI really simulates human intelligence in machines, but it's not intended to replace the human, right? It's supposed to elevate the work of the human, if anything else, in my view. But because some folks are scared about hearing about artificial intelligence all day long, and my job would be lost, I'll be replaced, everything I do will be automated, we've actually started to use slightly different terminology. Augmented and assisted intelligence. So it sounds a little more natural and friendly. It's been there since 1950s, right? There are traditional AI methods like machine learning, natural language processing, and computer vision. People don't even know they're using it. They probably have a robot at home that cleans, right? A Roomba or a Roborock. Well, that's AI, right? I think that the hype is there because of the launch of ChatGPT in 2020. And it's a big invention, right? It's based on large language models that can understand, synthesize text, and converse with you. So that's what we call Gen AI. But not every AI is using Gen AI, just to be very clear. And there are waves of innovation. We're no longer doing incremental kind of like development. We're seeing a hockey stick of Gen AI applications. You asked about the limitations. I mean, there are clearly technical limitations still. Do I have the right data? Can I trust it? Do I have enough data to train a model? And then the last piece is also very important. Do I have the proper data infrastructure? You need to have a data layer. You need to make sure that these very complex models with a lot of data are actually performant and scalable. They need to be pretty fast. So it's not trivial. But I firmly believe that these are easier to overcome than what Pouyan was talking about. I think the true limitations are around the lack of AI knowledge by the SME, lack of knowledge how to technically implement it, and also fear and uncertainty, right, about the future. It's ironic because FM teams are very busy. They're busier than ever. And they simply have maybe desire to learn, but no time during the day to learn AI and experiment with it. So I just want to ask Pouyan and Tom after I finish your answer, how they're overcoming that challenge, right? And then the other thing is really lack of adoption. So JLL Technology Survey from last year indicates a very strong desire. So that's positive. 60% of FM teams want to use AI in their day-to-day operations, but the reality is that only 10% of them do. And it's my second question to the audience here. There is no strategy, right? So usually that's the reason why adoption is low. There is desire, there is no comprehensive roadmap. You need to have some, maybe start with one or two very clear use cases with ROI, make the business case to the C-level executives, and then get their commitment and funding for more of a corporate level, hospital level adoption. So maybe I can pause and hear from Pouyan and Tom. How are they thinking overcoming these two challenges, lack of time to experiment during the day with increasing workloads, and then two, have you found like these use cases and strategy? Where on the journey are you from that perspective?
Can I ask you, and I do want to hear the answer to that question, going back to your 10% for just 1 second there, Irina, did the JLL survey, is that 10% of hospitals in America are using AI?
So it's a global survey. So it looks at
hospitals,
yeah, across the globe. And frankly, looks at a couple of other industries. Like it looks at all kinds of, it's very comprehensive.
Sure. That was a great question you just asked. So Tom, why don't you hit it first, and then Pouyan, you follow up, Tom.
Okay. Well, that was all really good. And I will say that, that adoption is interesting because there are a lot of variables into it, right? And each of us in our organizations look at AI, concerns about AI from different perspectives. For instance, for my team, they're not concerned about being replaced, right? Because at this point, until these robots can walk, talk, interact with patients, these AI is not going to go in and change the toilet out. It's not going to stop that leak or build an ICRA barrier. However, I think on a positive side, the engineers, as we share these, the engineers kind of are starting to see this as a tool. It's a tool for locating parts, right? Or alternatives to, like, I don't know about some other places, but most places, I would guess, we don't replace our elevators the moment they go obsolete. We don't replace our equipment the moment they go obsolete, right? In fact, we usually wait about 40 or 50 years after they go obsolete before we change them out, right? So that's typically the case. And so sometimes it's hard to get parts. To have the ability to say, I'm looking for this part. This is the part that was there a long time ago. This is or what's original. Give me some alternatives. And so they can see those as tools, or helping to solve problems.
Your team's doing that, Tom? Your team
these are the things that these are the conversations we're having at this point, because that's really right now not their priority, right? Mm-hmm. Right now they're just transitioning CMMSs. We're doing all kinds of different things, and a lot of changes where we are right now. But that's where so the team isn't concerned about though the team can, we've talked about it just lightly about, what if we implemented this? The one, they chuckle a little because we've all seen like the movies iRobot and things like that, where AI based and how we know how from Space Odyssey 2001. Those are the kind of things that we chuckle about, but underlying that is a concern that they have about their privacy, right? Because there are privacy concerns. Other people's
what is a
concerns.
privacy concern they've brought up, Tom? What's a privacy concern they've brought up?
Well, like you said, when they start carrying handhelds, how much does this thing know about me? We all joke about, we're having a conversation. The next thing you know, in Amazon, it recommends this product that you were just talking about, right? So it's kind of this concern about this big brother concern.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's always there, it's always listening. They use iPhones and iPads for their work day to day, for their work orders, and sometimes Siri responds when we don't ask her to, things like that. So there's always that underlying feeling that, hey, somehow I'm being watched by this thing, right? But honestly, that concern is shared by other departments as well, because there's when you talk about adoption, one of the biggest barriers of adoption to new technologies in a hospital, and this isn't necessarily meant to be a negative thing, because I started out in the IT world, then I went to biomed, and now I'm in facilities. So as you look at all of those pieces, IT looks at, okay, privacy. How is this going to affect the EHR if it's on our network? How is this going? What vulnerabilities can this add to our systems? And we know that hospitals can be very vulnerable. We've had a past few years. We've seen some significant impact because of data breaches and hacking and all of these things. So I think that is going to continue to be a barrier to utilization, to adoption of AI. I think is just making sure it's not IT not wanting to use it because they're nerds like me. They're we want to use it, but there are concerns because there are big risks that if something happens, same thing with building automation systems, right? Sometimes it takes a lot of deep collaboration with IT to implement BMS or BAS, new BAS systems or upgrades, because especially if it resides on on the hospital network. I've been some places where facilities, we had our own network our complete separate physical network, and that made things a little easier in that regard. But I think that's a barrier to adoption. I think that from the staff perspective, once going back to that, there might be, I think where AI really kicks in is with our admin, or maybe our admin teams and our managers, right? Because they're the ones typically doing this research. They're typically the ones putting together these reports, pulling this data. Because the engineers, they're like, I want to go turn a wrench, right? They're focused on tearing down the boiler, putting it back together, getting it up and running, keeping it running efficiently. So the AI tools are kind of in the background. It's a tool for them to help to highlight issues that they're not seeing anyway, but they need to see. But for the admin side and for the analysts, this is kind of, we may not need at some point so many, right? The good news for most of us is that we don't have them already, and so it's like so we don't have to worry about how it affects our current staff, because we just don't have the current staff that does that already, and that is. But on the flip side of that, it's also important to be seen as a tool by those team members, because, and I will tell you, moving, you guys, Houston and Boston, large cities, I moved from a bigger urban area to a very rural, and the rural hospitals, rural healthcare has very different problems than hospitals in cities. Financially, it's much more difficult. Payer mixes are can be extremely difficult to manage. Right? You may not have the specialties that your folks need, so you have transports, and you had to transport them out and refer them out a lot more often. So, but in the facilities world, a similar thing applies, because we may not have a certain specialty right down the road. Right? We may not have built-in fire life safety, an extensive knowledge of that around the area where we are, as it pertains to hospitals. We're the only hospital in our city, right? So so if we're bringing on staff, they're going to come back with the knowledge. They're going to come back with a knowledge base that they've learned at school, which is excellent from a trades perspective, or an academic perspective, but applying it to a hospital, they may not have that hospital experience when we're bringing in staff. So the AI, having these AI as tools may be more welcome in our situation than it might be in areas where they already have staffing doing that kind of work.
Pouyan, I want to hear you next, kind of like the process and Irina's question, but I just want to say something really quickly. I just heard a story yesterday. I was talking to a director of FM, and Tom, it goes to what you just said, and I'm sure we're going to see a little more of this in the future. He's one of those directors, gets out in the field, walks with his team. As he walks with the team, as they go by their mechanical equipment, what's this, what's this, what's this? This was actually on an interview. A guy was coming in to interview for a facilities job. The director points at a boiler and just says, hey, tell me a little bit about this. The candidate said, honestly, I don't know. And so they keep walking, and the director tells me, and as we're walking, he pulls out his phone. And the director's thinking, what is this person doing? Starts typing on his phone. He put the boiler into ChatGPT to figure out what it was. Now, that's all well and good, but you're not going to get the job, probably, if that's how you're handling it. But it's very interesting, because we're seeing that out in the field. You guys are seeing it out in the field all the time. I just wanted to mention that, because I'm sure some of the listeners have probably experienced that. Pouyan, though, to you, relative to direction, process, Irina's questions, what's your, is it a strategic plan from MD Anderson? How are you going about it?
Well, I mean, just before we get to that question,
Sure.
I just want to add one little things about that, what it is, what it's not. And then I want to give you that couple of the roadblocks that I've noticed in that. One is that what Thomas is also put on that privacy, as a hospital, as the employees, that we've been really basically, they give us a warning and cautious about that, what we put into the systems, because no sensitive data should be being used. No private data should be used. I mean, we don't have access to any of the patients' information and any of that. However, still there are some sensitive data that we are working in a daily basis that we have to be careful when we use these tools as an assistant to us. So there is the cautionary, a little bit on that one. So everybody wants to make sure that has been not basically, because as soon as that you copy paste something in a ChatGPT or a Gemini or something, that's a public information. And it can be found by somebody, it can be used by somebody. So that is very, very fine line to walk. Yeah, maybe I can just use it to rewrite my email, but that's fine. But when I'm answering my legal departments about that, something's happened in somewhere, I have to be careful that not using that tools to rewrite my email, because it might be used somewhere, that we're not supposed to have that information out there. So that's a one cautious. I know that MD Anderson is working to have a local AI, basically working with this big companies to have contained AI. big time on our research side, because they really like to use these tools to enhance the researches, but they don't want to just use the public AI for that, enhancing their research publications and all that stuff. So that's what it's been working on. The other thing is that I find out people expecting perfections from AI, and they forget about that. Still, it's not a perfect. It is still having an error in it. So I happened that I analyzed 500 reports, and I get the report. The information's back, and they poke a hole and said that, oh, is missed one this. I said that. Well, don't forget that we as human also miss. It's no difference from the autonomous driving. Everybody's get a headline if autonomous car is having a crash. They forget about that. The humans having maybe 100 times more crash on the road. So that being said, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get any crash from autonomous car. We're still going to get the crash, but comparison to the human, am I going to be 1,000 times more safer? So, and there's some expectations like that. Hey, this should be a perfect, it should do everything for me perfectly, which is not. It's not going to do perfectly. There's a lot of improvement in that one. So on an institutional strategies, right now in facility side, I think that like what we're speaking here, we are trying to use that as more of the management tool and assistant tool to gain efficiency. That part has been in the work. I know that some of the question that you put it in place right now in talking about the work orders and PM management software, we see that a lot of good AI tools on the what we call the reliability center, which has been around for a while, but it was been tools that has been used in the other industry. Now it becomes more viable to use for the hospitals, reliability centers system. So these AI tools can easily go over all of our records and PMs and corrected work actions and come with the recommendations of find the problems or issues. On the BAS side, we are moving toward the IP-based BAS systems, so we be ready for when a better AI tool's coming up. Besides that, what we have today, I'm sure that's going to be a better technology coming in the next several years. But we're getting, our systems be ready in our new buildings that be able to collecting all the data and be able to also controlling. I don't think that at this moment, we have been see even the tip of the iceberg. It's huge potentials is coming, which we've not even discovered that. So at this moment, as a good assistant, it's helping a lot to gain the day-to-day efficiency, but there's going to be a lot more coming up.
So Pouyan, I'm really happy that you kind of finished there because we're coming up towards the end. We have a couple more minutes, and I want to thank my guest, Pouyan Layegh, Associate Vice President, Engineering and Building Systems from MD Anderson, Tom Elliott, Director of Facilities, Confluence Health, Aramark Health Plus, and Irina, Mladenova, Chief Product Officer for Vytal. I want to finish with what you just said. And Irina, I do want to throw it to you because Pouyan, you talked about what's coming. As you look out, Irina, with kind of the AI, what is coming? What's next? And I know and I guess maybe short term and then just a little bit longer term. What's that next step look like?
We're in a very exciting era, as I said. There are ways of innovation, both software but also hardware, right? In the past, processing these large models with a traditional computing power would have been very challenging, if not impossible, right? So we are again seeing huge innovation. Where that's going to take us, who knows? But I am very optimistic that it's going to be to a good place where, in fact, I'm hopeful that humans will have more time to enjoy nature. People are talking about we're going to probably get to a 3-day work week, not a 4-day work week, because now humans are going to just oversee the AI, make strategic decisions, and just have a lot more free space. I mean, there is a very interesting movie I watched maybe 2 years ago out of the UK called Humans. And that's the basic thesis, right? Humans are going to have much more of a work-life balance, and their lives would be just elevated by AI. I think for the FM world, it comes at a very good time, right? We have big FM shortage and we have constrained budgets. Hospitals need to do a lot more with a lot less. So it's coming as a rescue, in my view, to FM teams. It's a necessary but also inevitable workforce augmentation.
Awesome. Last question, and Tom and Pouyan, to you, yes or no? Do you think AI will help balance out that work-life balance for you and for your teams? Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Tom, yes or no?
I just can't help but say it depends, but I don't. I'd say to a point,
So,
but
well,
I just can't say no. I just can't say yes. I cannot commit to that because
I'll give you 75%. That's actually a really good AI and work-life balance. That would, especially in the FM world, that would be, talk about a sea change. Nobody would be used to that. So really good episode. I appreciate Irina, Tom, Pouyan. Thank you so much for joining me. To our guests, thank you. And to anybody watching, thank you. Peter Martin, Healthcare Facilities Network. Thank you for watching. If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.